Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Trophy Moments and a Few Firsts with me. And I have a distinguished guest today who has progressed in life from a title of professional idiot to the Emperor of Fun to his current title, Hero of Fun, David Raymond.
Oh,
welcome, David.
Thanks, Keith. It's great to be here with the friend, and I absolutely love this format. The last time I was live recording a podcast was Jason Alexander from Seinfeld, his podcast called Really No Really. So you got a lot of things. You got to come to the table today, Keith.
Well, it's easy to come to the table with you because first I'm going to take my guests. They probably know a little bit about you, but there's so many layers to the onion that I don't know if this is going to be enough time in a half an hour to get to all the things, but I'm going to do my best. So you're an author, a keynote speaker. You're probably best known as the original Phillie Phanatic.
Yes, that is correct.
You're a happiness thought leader, I guess the Emperor of Fun still.
Yes.
For Raymond Entertainment, which is a mascot business, which we'll get into. You're the founder of the Mascot Hall of Fame. Did everybody know that there's a Hall of Fame for mascots? And we're going to have to ask them where it's at. And you're also the son of a very famous Hall of Famer, Tubby Raymond, from the University of Delaware, their football coach.
Yes, the Fighting Blue Hens.
The Fighting Blue Hens. And you are a Fighting Blue Hen.
Yes, I am. A Blue Hens forever. Once you go there, you're Blue Hens forever.
So I know the audience would want a little bit of taste of how the hell did you become the Philadelphia Fanatic?
Oh, it might be ironic, but it was because of my dad.
Really?
Yeah, because I grew up as, my earliest memory, I wanted to be my dad, and I wanted to play football for my dad. All of his players when I was a little kid were my heroes. I wasn't following professional sports other than the Phillies because my dad knew the Carpenter family. The Carpenter family, who were the owners. Carpenter family have 2 buildings on the campus of the University of Delaware named after them. So I'm growing up in the atmosphere of nothing but sports. All I want to do is go to Delaware. I'm not thinking of education. I don't care what I study. I just want to be a football coach. And when I went there and started playing for him my sophomore year, he goes, let me help you get a job with the Phillies. You got to have a different perspective than trying to follow me, who's been at the same institution for almost 50 years.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and it doesn't happen anymore.
No, it doesn't.
At the time, it was him and Paterno were the longest tenure at the same place. So I started an internship in 76, 77. It was 2 years. It went by too fast. I was there for a week. I go, I don't want to be a football coach. I could have a career working for the Phillies. And I go back to school.
You were an intern at the Phillies?
Yeah, 76 and 77. I was working for Frank Sullivan in promotions, and I was cleaning toilets, and then I was taking the person who sang the national anthem to get him dinner at the club. Everything and everything.
You're a professional gopher.
Right. That's where a little bit below professional idiot, but I hadn't gotten there yet.
You hadn't got to the idiot part yet.
I hadn't raised my game yet. So, they called me on the 3rd summer and said, do you want to come back? And I said, yeah. What do you want me to do? And they said, go to New York, which was a strange place to send a Phillies fan, and get fitted for the costume, which I protested a little bit. I go, what are you talking about? And they said, look, just go to New York, get fitted for the costume. It'll all be good.
So you didn't know?
No, I went to New York, and I meet Bonnie Erickson, who was one of Jim Henson's original designers. The studio looked like Geppetto's.
Jim Henson, the Muppets.
Yeah.
Jim Henson.
Yeah, and it looked like Geppetto's puppet studio. The place was amazing. It was right off of Broadway. It's West 39th Street or down in the Garment District. And then they show me the design drawing, and I said, oh my gosh, I'm going to get paid to be a Muppet. And there was nerves about that because then you start thinking, well, didn't our fans throw snowballs at Santa Claus? And I laughed at that because I said, I was there. I saw them when I was a kid at Franklin Field. And I always said, Santa looked bad. He had a bad day.
Oh, time out.
So he deserved it.
You're old enough to be in Franklin Field? You don't look that old.
I used to. Dude, you and we could have gone together. That was when the Eagles weren't very good, and they were taking out their frustrations on a poorly done Santa. Yeah. And, so I really felt like I could do this because I was a Phillies fan and I understood the insecurity and all that. And I just wanted to keep a job. I didn't know what I was doing. Didn't care what I was doing.
How old were you?
I was 21 years old.
21 years old.
Actually 20. And then that was in 1978. And it took off about as fast as Gritty took off without social media. So it took about 6 months.
Yeah, and just as a side note, you also helped design Gritty?
Yes, I worked with the Flyers to follow a process that was the same process deconstructed that the Phillies followed to create the Phanatic. And that's what I always do at Raymond Entertainment is, let's talk about who you are, what you are. Let's tell a story first. And so the Flyers were amazing.
And I just have to, a cheap plug that you helped me with my mascot, Spike the Trophy.
A loving cup.
A loving cup, which I appreciate.
It was one of the most difficult designs to get a human being inside there, but
it worked.
Well, we had also had a great performer.
So anyway, so you're at the Phillies, you're becoming a fanatic, and
and I didn't know I didn't believe I knew what I was doing, which is a whole part of what I speak about is having a natural skill set that was designed after many, many years, which was nonverbal communication because my mother was deaf. She went deaf when I was 3 years old.
So really, so that's where that comes from.
Yeah, I'm assuming that all of my skill sets to communicate nonverbally came from trying to entertain and communicate with Mom. And, and she used to tell me when a media person would ask me that question, I would kind of, push that away thinking I was taking advantage of my mom's, and I'm doing air quotes, handicap. And my mom said, no, that makes sense. And because she was a certified interpreter for the deaf at that point, created a whole career because of it, never treated it like a handicap. And she was teaching deaf kids, look, the fact that you're deaf does not mean you can't become a whole and complete person. It's not a handicap. You just happen to be a person whose ears are not working. You can do everything a person can do, which is, the same thing with kids with special needs, kids with Down syndrome. They're children first, and
we all have challenges.
Yeah.
We all have mountains that we have to climb.
I got special needs. I can't remember my kids' names. So I'm, but I think that what was beautiful about the experience with the Phanatic was enlightened leadership. The Carpenter family didn't care about what they did prior to the game, but they knew how important it was. So they bring Bill Giles in, who helped create the Astrodome. He grows up and becomes an owner, brings a world championship our way, and he was my mentor.
Always a promoter.
Yeah, he knew he was built out of the Bill Veeck mode. Yep. He was the same concept. He just believed in this. He didn't want to build a business. He wanted to create a family atmosphere,
an experience,
and he did that so well. And for me, when I was just 21, 22 years old, and he would come to me and say, I didn't understand what you did. It wasn't my most favorite thing you did in the fifth inning. Could you tell me why you did it? And my first response was, well, Mr. Giles, you don't like it, I'll stop it. He goes, no, that's not what I'm saying. I want to understand why you're doing it. And I would normally say, well, the fans really like it. He would take the time to go out. Are you doing it tonight again? Yes. He'd watch it and he'd come back the next day and said, I like that. That was really good. He goes, now we've got dozens of letters from a teacher here saying that what you're doing on the field was violent, which I was smashing the plastic helmets from the opposing team. And he said, he's saying it's violent. He's trying to control his elementary school kids. It's not helping. So you need to call him and tell him why we're still doing it. So when I talked to Bill today, he goes, well, I just didn't want to talk to that guy. I thought maybe you might be able to handle it better than me. And it was, but that he did know. He knew everything he was doing. And to grow.
How many years were you at the Phanatic?
I was there for 16 years. So 18 as an intern, but 16 from 1986 to 2000, which to 1994, when just before Mitch Williams ripped our hearts out, or just after, I should say.
It's an easy job, right?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what's amazing. I, as an athlete, back when the NCAA allowed double sessions, so we had them in high school, we had them in college. And when I heard from the people who were making the costume, this is really going to be hot. And they were only dealing with controlled situations on television. So they're on sets. They're not outside of Veterans Stadium with 100 degrees
on the turf,
on the AstroTurf,
where it just bakes you.
Yeah. So I'm like, this is nothing. So the first time I went out, which was in the evening in the spring, which is the coolest night you'll run into. And I worked my way all the way down to, I don't know if people remember the picnic area. There was, which are now really good seats that they started to realize that value-wise, they probably shouldn't have picnic tables there. So I ran all the way down there and I'm jumping around because I decided, the only direction I had from Bill was go have fun. And I went and I stopped and I went, oh my gosh, I'm going to die. I can't walk all the way up the stands again. So when the inning was over, I just jumped over the railing to run because back then you could get out behind home plate where the ground crew was. And that was right close to where my locker room was. So I just jumped over there. As soon as I jumped over, I started looking around like the fans are screaming and going crazy. And I'm on the field. The umpire waved at me when I ran by him. And I'm like, they laughed. I'm like, oh, all right, I got to do this more. And I mean, it was all, the direction was go have a good time. Bill said G-rated fun, made sure I was clear. And he supported that all the time. So that, and it wasn't until I left the Phillies that I realized not every organization has that type of trust and that sense of family, and it was really a difficult thing for me when I started to run my business to get involved with organizations that couldn't understand what we were doing was valuable because I lived it. It was just part of my DNA.
How did you transition out of being what was that? The
professional idiot at that level.
Idiot.
I hadn't given myself quite
yourself to an emperor of fun.
Well, then I'm emperor of fun. If John Brazier, who is the director of fun for the Phillies, hears this, he'll appreciate it because we all kid each other about it. When I left, we were creating titles. So I said, I'll be emperor of fun. And I said, I can't be director of the fun because John is director of fun. And if he finds out, he could pull rank on me. But I'm emperor of fun. He's just a director. Shut up. So we still have that. So I had inspiration from John's title at the Phillies. And I said, okay, well, let me be the emperor of fun. And that really served us well. The reason why I'm now hero of happiness is because the media interviewed me about what I'm doing with my speaking. And they said, oh, and the title said hero of happiness on this expose in some magazine. And I'm like, okay.
That sounds good
I
to
like
me.
that better. So I've gone from an intern to a professional idiot to the emperor of fun to a hero of happiness. I mean, life is good, Keith.
How many mascots have you created?
I've got a total number about 127. And wow. I would say 80% of them are brand new and the other 23% or so are reinvigorated. Like it was established and then we helped them create a softer. We just did this with Thomas Jefferson University and Phil the Ram. We learned more about the story and we created him and that character is just being rolled out, I think, tomorrow. Or maybe it just did this weekend. And I'm teaching some of their students how to be good in costume.
So you also have a mascot. You train them how to become a performer.
I do. And
do you do that anymore?
Yeah, but it's funny that you said that because in business, so sometimes you say we're going to burn the boats.
Yeah. And
I love the speaking world and what I'm doing. It's a bigger thing. It's a bigger purpose.
I want to get to that very quickly.
But so what I've done is I've got the boats firmly anchored in the harbor. I'm not setting them on fire. So if a client comes to me and they really want my creative influence, my expertise influence, then I'm going to work with them. If they just want me to build what they already have, I have all kinds of vendors that can help them. And I'm just decided I'm going to do the things that really I feel inspired to do. And I'm lucky enough to be there.
So tell me about that. You're inspired to be a speaker. So you're giving keynote speakers presentations around the country. And who hires you?
Yeah.
And why?
In this business,
and what do you cover?
It's a great question because in this business, they tell you to pick a lane. Yet I'm talking about being a human being. I'm talking about being a better human being. And I'm talking about how we can share that with the people around us and then our businesses and communities and make the world a better place. So, I mean, who doesn't want that? So the yin and yang of that is it's really great to be diverse like that. It's hard to get caught into one environment where they find what you're giving valuable. Well, what's happened is right now, currently, I'm big in the construction industry of all places.
You found a niche in the construction.
Yeah, and then once you go in there, they refer you they're not going to refer you to financial planners. They're going to
So if I'm a construction worker and
I'm
I'm walking into a David Raymond speech, what am I going to hear?
Well, if it's a construction worker, which most of the time I'm talking to their leadership.
Okay, so
I think there are construction workers that are in those rooms.
Okay. I'm a leader.
So we're talking about how the best way for them to be safe. So let me drive.
Well, you just told me we were talking right before this about the moles.
Right.
So you're about to have a speech with the moles. Describe that, and it's pretty prestigious.
Yes, they've been around since 1937. They're combined.
Who spoke in front of them?
FDR, Nixon,
and David Raymond, of course.
Well, it's a natural progression, right? You might say that my first title might have fit some people that have spoken there, but that would be politics, and I don't want to go there. It was. I guess 10 years ago, I would have been completely intimidated. I wouldn't have been confident. But because of all the last 10, 11 years in the speaking, the audience is coming back and telling me how important it is. And I've spoken to the National Academy of Construction in Boston, and that's where this referral came from, we're a formal president of the Moles, which is like a fraternity of engineers, designers, construction companies, owners. They call like the New York City is the owner of the Moynihan train station. Well, that's been reconfigured, and it's the new Penn Station. Well, the people in the Moles built that. They also built the rebuild of the World Trade Center. These people are brilliant folks, but they're 55 and up. A lot of them are retired or in mentorships in their business, trying to get students involved, and they recognize now the value of being human. So when we're not going to talk about tunnels, we're going to talk about how the great design of tunnels connect people. It's kind. You get in the Holland Tunnel. I'm sitting there with my wife when she goes through the tunnel with me. She goes, "How the heck did they make this?" And I go, "I have no idea."
I've wondered that.
But I'm getting to the Broadway show a lot faster than getting on a boat or getting a kayak and going over the river to get there.
That's what these guys do.
Yeah, and they really do. They're connecting people, and that's what I'm going to hit them with, because it's all about the things we have in us to be happier and healthier for ourselves first. But the same process you learn to do that, you suddenly realize if you live long enough and the brutality of life visits you, this is the same process that can help you overcome that and then thrive when life gives you the good stuff. And all of this information was going on inside the Phanatic for me during a time when my mom had passed with cancer, my marriage fell apart, all in the same couple of months. So for those of us who are old enough to remember, I had a Leave It to Beaver experience from my earliest memory until my mom got sick when I was about 35 years old. And I was in a situation where you say, you slip into this hopelessness, and that's where bad decisions are thought of. Mm-hmm. And this is where suicide resides. And the highest performance people that have decided to use that as their out, everybody around me goes, "I can't believe they did that." And I was there. And I still today, I'm ashamed to say that because that's part of the problem. And I was ready to quit the Phanatic during the time because I said, how could I be a clown?
I was there at some point way back in my life. I'm sure there's a number of people that have been.
There are, and many that you don't know. That's
Yes.
the scary part.
So I wrote something down because we had dinner over the holidays. We were at the National Speakers Association dinner, and we're sitting across from Hurricane Schwartz, and you're telling him this story about how you affected somebody. And you talked about you saved somebody's life, or they came up to you afterwards, and the communication of your speech that day about fun and being a person. Could you relay that?
Yeah,
do you remember that conversation?
Yeah, and it was this is the
that touched me.
Well, thank you, and it certainly touched me, and it actually frightened me because it was the first time it happened. So they say you're in service of the audience when you do this work. Well, if you get a pat on the back and they say great job, that's important. But when somebody comes and says, "Hey, look, I want to tell you what you said what it means to me," and I've never expected to get the feedback that I've gotten. So, and that made me start to prepare. Hey, look, you're moving people, so you got to make sure you're prepared for what it might be doing and be thoughtful. So I was speaking at on the Valley Forge campus for the Freedoms Foundation that brings in high school kids from all over the country. And what I loved about it, I did it for about 9 years, and I loved that it'd be 45 kids. They'd get done, and I would talk to the kids. They'd wait for me. And I started realizing that sometimes a kid would be holding back, waiting until everybody else goes away. And I started realizing, this is going to be an important conversation. Well, this young lady, little blonde-haired girl from Florida, I always remember her ponytail. And she came up to me with a big smile on her face and said, "Can I talk to you?" And I said, "Sure." She goes, I just feel like I need to say this. And she just blurts out with a smile on her face, "I've been thinking a lot about suicide, but after hearing from you tonight, I don't think I'm going to think about that much anymore." And I'm biting my lip. I just don't want to. I don't want to go, "Oh my gosh!" I just
You're
reacted.
playing poker.
Yes, as calmly as I could. And I said, "Could you do me a favor?" And she says, "Yes, sure." And I said, "When you go home to Florida, find somebody that you trust, somebody in your family or friend, and tell them just what you told me." And she said, "Sure," and turned around and said, "Thank you," and walked away. And I just see her ponytail swishing back and forth. And what I took away from that, and continue to think about it every day before I get up on stage, is that there are people that are thinking about these things without any idea of the consequences. And young people, high performance people, feel not like they're not doing the hard work that they think they should be doing, when really They're highest performers on the planet. And all they need is permission to get out of hopelessness a tick to be able to tell somebody. And that's how simple the solution is for this sort of thing. I mean, we've got, 9 veterans a day choose to take their own life?
I think the number's 20, over 20.
Well, okay, so
I went through training to help vets, and
that's just one segment.
The veterans training that I went through, weeks was spent on suicide.
Yeah, and it's an epidemic, not just because of the pandemic, but because of the generation of how they connect and communicate. That we're in this epidemic of loneliness, and loneliness is a kindred spirit to hopelessness, because you just need to get another punch in the nose when you're lonely to go down there, and that's where we got to get people to lift them up above that. And my whole concept is about a simple process that you could follow to keep you above that.
Using fun and happiness.
Yeah, just and recognizing it's up to you.
Yes.
That the things, when you look at the word fun, you discount it, you don't think of it. I tell my audiences to look at it with the mindset of a child, because it's innocence. They're only worried about the here and now. They don't worry about the past or the future. And man, when they look at fun,
do you get silly in your presentations?
I do. I need to entertain and engage them. There's a moment where I change.
The fanatic comes out.
Yes, there's actually when I'm explaining to them what my mom did for me, I recount a time that when I was a little kid, it was all, "Hey, Mom, did you?" And I'm non-verbally, I'm dancing in front of my mom and doing my things as if I was a elementary school child. And then I said, well, when I became a teenager, those weren't all as great. And I reflect on a moment when she told me I couldn't have the car for the dance on Friday, and I go nuts, and I'm screaming at her, and she turns her hearing aid off and walks away from me. And I go, okay, and that's when the Phanatic's personality was born. And I do a full nonverbal piece where I get one side of the audience to cheer against the other, all nonverbally, the way the Phanatic would. And it's really been, they call it in the business, you have to have a bit, it's a signature bit. And this is authentic, and I love doing it, because what's great about that, Keith, is I break them up into teams, and if I get the first team is going to, and I go 1, 2, 3 with my fingers, and then I do this motion of like cheer, and most of the time they do nothing, which is so good, because I have this whole nonverbal chastising where I'm looking at them like, oh, I'm really scared, I can't cheer. And then I go to team 2 and go, come on, look at team 1. You're team 2, they're team 1, and they suck. You got to do it. So I have all this nonverbal that communicates.
It's
that.
so funny. I'm into these.
I have a blast with it.
And I'm taking an improv class. And yesterday in my improv class, it was all about nonverbal communication and making it come to life. And so that without speaking, you can communicate exactly what you're talking about. So that's what you're an expert at.
Well, I mean, and the thing that's funny is that I didn't know for many, many years later, after I had left the Phillies, I still wasn't giving myself credit. And the people around me were saying, will you take some credit?
Yeah.
I mean, you were, it wasn't just you were the first, and that's what, you were good at this. And that's when I started to really dig into all of this work that I'm doing now. Was, well, my mom told me about that. And I realized that what I love about this is that I give my mom credit for creating that personality. And then that's the personality that saved me. I mean, it's just so
ironic.
Wonderful. And and she died at 59. So I was 36 years old.
Wow.
And to now be able to stand on a stage and testify about how amazing she was. And, my dad was my hero, but she was the front woman. She was the glue. And she just, did so many great things for our family. And then I go, wow. And she, truly put together something that was a savior for me. So, and it's great in a speech when you can entertain them, make them laugh, and then pull them into the, some depths of brutality of life, and everybody relates to that.
Yep.
So I'm not just saying, hey, wake up and you're going to be happy and unicorns and rainbows. There's
some reality to it.
Yeah, and there's some real value to this when you don't think, what, I would have fun then? What are you talking about? And no, it's powerful fun. And there's a big difference between the fun that and the fun that we've designed and developed as a power of fun process.
So I'm going to go shift some gears to the title, Trophy Moments and a few first. So what's a trophy moment in your life and how did it impact you?
Yeah, well,
what comes to mind?
Yeah, well, it's my dad being my hero and him being a tough nonsense guy, and hearing my name announced for the first time and running out on the football field at University of Delaware Stadium.
That's your trophy moment.
That's now that's
what were you running out for?
Well, I was his kicker. I was his punter.
Okay.
And and here's how he inspired me that day. I didn't find out till halftime. I was actually in a red shirt time when if I didn't kick on my sophomore year, I could go an extra year, and I was looking forward to that. Well, of course, the starting kicker was a good friend of mine, helped me a great deal. He was out with an injury, and I get told at halftime, you're going to go out kick. So I go out to the sideline, and I always say, this was the one moment in my life I was ready for. I couldn't wait. And then I was petrified when I found out. I couldn't even walk out to the sidelines. And I'm going, I got to go out and catch this ball and then kick the ball. And I said,
Who were you playing?
We were playing, it was Wittenberg. And we were Division II at the time, and Wittenberg was beating us at the time. And so we get stalled on offense right away. So I bring the kick team up, and my dad is to my right, and the offensive coordinator is to my left. So my dad normally, when it's third down and he decides we're kicking it, he would look at the kicker and say, kick it. Instead, that day, he looked at me, and then he looked across my face to Coach Kempski and said, is that all we've got? Because he knew I was petrified. He had to piss me off. And I ran out of the field. I caught the ball. I kicked a 60-yard punt, which was one of the longest in my career.
The adrenaline was pumping?
Yeah, because I was mad at him. And it wiped away all the fear. And then as I'm running off the field, he points a finger at me, winks at me, and I go, oh, he did it to me. God, I've seen that since I was a little kid, him doing it to football players. How could I not capture that? Yeah, so, and you know what? It was the greatest thing. I mean, he was a
master
brilliant
motivator.
Football coach. And I realized all these days now that I'm doing this, Keith, that I wanted to be like him. I wanted to get up in front of people and make them feel and act and do different things that are better for them.
And you're doing it.
Yeah, well, I hope so. Thank you.
No, I've heard from people that have seen you, and I've been to a few of yours.
Oh, well,
it's been a few years, but
it's matured.
Yes. So that now I'm going to turn it to what's a first? Something that you've always wanted to do and haven't done yet.
No, it's a great one because my dad was a painter and a really good portrait painter.
Really?
And, yes, and he used to. Well, he for 50 years almost he painted every senior in acrylic that he could do quickly. Wow. And I have mine as a senior. You get it, and it's like a motivational poster. It has the mascot UD saying something, and then it has you saying something, and it's just your bust. And I have that in my office, and many of his players do. And he really got great at it. He worked hard. And his mentor is a younger painter, Sean Fouts, he's commissioned to do the Kentucky Derby winner. He paints the horse. Wow. So his equestrian stuff is just gorgeous. So what I've gotten involved in pencil drawing, and I'm deeply into pencils, and it's just shading, and it's the basics of learning how to draw. Mm-hmm. I'm frightened to death to go to color because color is such a big leap in my mind anyway. And Sean has told me, no. Once you learn pencil, you've got everything you need.
Yes.
The color is just mixing them to get the shades. And I go, yeah, but there's so many colors, Sean. I just have black and white, and that is good for me. So I have, because of how busy I'm not drawing as much as I was. So I'm going to get back into that, but that's the thing I want to do.
Okay, I've got a little trick because I'm a frustrated watercolor artist.
Oh, and that's
okay.
The best.
And I'm scared to death of making mistakes. So in my leap year first, one of the things I saw was, and it's the first time I did it, was a free form painting. And what I mean by that is you take this various couple complementary colors of paint and just throw it onto and then they get you to turn it. Okay, what do you see there? I didn't see anything. Turn it. Didn't see there. And then, you know what? I see like a leopard.
And then you start the leopard.
Then you so it frees you because there isn't anything. You can't mess it up. And you create something out of nothing.
That's so cool.
So I challenge you to go home in the next whatever, by the end of this year, take some of that color.
And just throw it.
Throw it. And you've already got a skill that I didn't, and you're much better. I'm not a great drawer. You've already got that skill, and your friend is right. If you've got that, you can make that color into something.
And that's what he said when he start and you start to draw. That's what pencil's supposed to do for you. It's all about the light, like photography. Yep. It's all about the light. So if you get the light right, things become three-dimensional off the page. And my dad used to bring me into a studio when he was doing a painting, and he would say, let me show you the difference of where this was and after I met with Sean. And the gentleman, the portrait guy's nose was there, and I said, well, it looks great, Dad. He said, but watch this. And he would take some of the ultra white in oil. He'd put a little bit of color that was part of the skin tone, and he would take a dot of a little tiny picture and go boop on his nose. And then I went, oh my God. And then immediately the nose just had all this dimension. And it's just that one little piece of light that you would represent in whatever the medium is. I'm reading a book called The Creative Act by Rick Rubin. Creative Act, A Way of Being. It's amazing. He's the music producer, and it's all, and when I first read the first few pages, I went, this is nonsense. I'm not going to capture it. It is beautiful. And it's all about just what you said. It's in many different ways about the process and about being in tune with things that are going on around you, be present, hearing things, feeling things, and that you'll get inspiration. And I was preparing for the moles where I had to take my 55-minute keynote and it's 20 minutes long. So I can do it, but I was like, well, how can I do it in a way that I feel like I'm delivering the message? And I just did a rehearsal this morning with some feedback, and I'm like on a high because I'm reading this book, and it's exactly what he's saying is happening. He said, you just got to relax. Sometimes you got to move. And he said, because you can take this for what it's worth. Some of this stuff you may think is nonsense, but something that fits you, take it and use it. And you got to read that book. You'll love that book.
I will. So we're running out of time, and I want to make sure that my audience knows how to get in front of you and hear one of your speeches. So if I wanted to see David Raymond and be inspired by you, how am I going to see that?
Well, you can see many generations ago, I did a TEDx talk. So it's called Be the Fanatic and Be Happier Now. That's the bones of it. Come to DaveRaymondSpeaks.com. The least expensive, it costs nothing. Go be able to enjoy our newsletter. I know everybody's got a newsletter, but this comes out once a month, Friday at 5:30, and it's designed to make your weekend better. Some tips and tricks on how you can boost your mood. And you get a free copy of my book, The Power of Fun. Jeff Bezos doesn't get any of my money. You can only buy my book on my website at DaveRaymondSpeaks.com. And that's usually the way people get in touch with me first to see if this is right for them. And they join the newsletter, they buy the book. And then there are people who have organizations who refer me to go talk to their folks that are bringing in speakers. So I'm at big conferences and events and associations, but I'm also at some smaller events and been spending a lot of time at the Hard Rock Casino because they've gotten to know me there. And so they're referring me to the people that are booking their event space. And I'm like, I'm living the best life now because I feel like I'm doing something important.
You are. This has been so much fun. From the hero of fun, David Raymond. And this is another version of Trophy Moments and a Few Firsts with Keith.
Thank you, my friend.
Thanks, David.